I'm a internal medicine doctor who's been in practice for 30 years in the Denville area. I did my training at New Jersey Medical School and came to Morris County right after that. During that practice, I was seeing a lot of people over the age of 65, and the seniors became a large part of my practice. So I went back and became certified in geriatric medicine as well in 1992, and recertified again in 2013. The importance of that is it just gives me a little bit of a better idea of those things and those syndromes that affect those people in our senior population. I was the director of geriatrics at Morristown Medical Center for the last 9 years, and recently decided to come to fellowship and join forces with this great organization to provide senior care as well here at the Basking Ridge location and at the Denville location in the office that is there across the street from St. Clair's Hospital, actually. So I'm happy to be here and to answer any questions.
And Dr. Sheppell, I just have a quick question to ask you. You know, Fellowship Senior Living's been a provider of senior living for 23 years. And, you know, can you talk a little bit with the viewers about, or the participants about, you know, what services and the importance, all of the services, I guess, that Fellowship Senior Living has to offer, as well as the importance of that continuum that's available to our residents and all those we care for and serve?
Well, Fellowship Senior Living is encompasses a CCRC, a continuing retirement community, continuing care retirement community, and it offers 3 levels of living options. One is independent living, when people can live in houses on our campus, a very large campus where people can live independently in their own homes. Also independently in apartments on the campus. In that continuum of care, also we have assisted living, which is a next step that would provide a higher level of care as required by either a medical condition or a social condition, and that is part of the continuum that we have here. And the third aspect of it would be the subacute area and the skilled care, where people would require a higher level of care and live in a setting where nursing is much more available and oversight is much closer. As well, on every level, we have a medical team made up of physicians and nurse practitioners that provide care in the independent living area, in the assisted living area, and also in the skilled level of care as well.
So it had, you know, Fellowship Senior Living is a destination basically for our seniors in the community, as well as as I oversee home and community-based services in our long-term care program, Fellowship Freedom Plans. So we have created a destination for anybody out in the general community, and you opening or partnering with us and having the Denville location has really enabled us to join forces and reach the greater community, which is really fabulous. So I think that's great. You know, we are able to provide all the care and services that people are looking for. But now when it comes to COVID-19, this last year has been quite a challenge, as we all know. So we're here today to talk about myths, things that, you know, are on people's minds right now with COVID and the vaccination in particular. Can we really trust that the COVID-19 vaccines are, you know, safe and, you know, they were rapidly produced? Can you tell all of us about that? Because I know that's at least one of my thoughts.
Sure. Definitely will get to that. I just wanted to mention one other thing that you're well aware of, Liz, and actually triggered a thought in my mind when you started mentioning about home care. We have such a broad offering here at Fellowship that can provide different types of services to people who are in need. And we also have an outreach program. The administration here is really very forward-looking, and with the opening of the Denville office and with our office here, looking towards offering services to the community and geriatric care and internal medicine care also as well. So that's really unique to Fellowship. I think that's worth mentioning. In terms
Great.
of COVID, this is really the issue of our time. Certainly in 2020, and it will be ongoing. This virus is not unique in that the coronavirus. There are other types of coronaviruses, but this particular virus is new, and with the newness of it, there is no immunity in our population. So we're all very susceptible to getting this virus. It is highly transmissible, usually from person to person via droplet exposure. And usually when someone is in a normally ventilated room, at a distance of less than 6 feet, with no masking and no PPE or protective equipment, it's very highly transmissible. And it can be transmitted via surfaces, but it doesn't live very long. It depends on the porousness of the surface. So it's not really that much of a risk as much as it is transmissibility by respiratory droplets.
So this vaccine that's being offered to all of us, there's been so many questions surrounding it. You hear some things, if you watch the news, we don't even know what is really going on with the vaccine. Is that it's not going to give me COVID-19, correct?
No, and I think the vaccine is remarkable, quite frankly, and that the time that it took to develop it and the time that it took from development to making it to market to being available to people and in those high risk groups as it is right now, and then of course the general population as we go forward. The vaccine is a technology that's been used for about 10 years, but it's been used in the development of this vaccine because of the availability of the technology is there, and ramping up has been quicker than with other conventional vaccines. And one of the other reasons that you had mentioned why is it safe and why is it available so quickly is because at the same time that these trials were going on, the manufacturing actually was taking place. Usually pharma doesn't like to do that because they want to at least be sure that the vaccines are going to be effective and pass through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 and be effective so that the investment that they make will give them a return once it is marketed. But there was so many resources from both governmental and private that the pharmaceutical companies did not have that risk. So manufacturing occurred at the same time. So when the phase 3 trials were evaluated and the vaccines were seen to be effective and safe, because they went through the same rigorous evaluation as do all vaccines as they're evaluated by the FDA. They were ready to go and efficacious and then administered. They are extremely safe. They are this technology, the messenger RNA, which is the mechanism by which the vaccine is developed, has been known for decades and has been used in other vaccine developments. And the trials that were completed for the Pfizer and Moderna virus vaccines showed to be very, very safe, with the side effects being minor, generally maybe some achiness at the site of injection, some feverishness, aches and pains, usually short-lived, occurring right after the administration of the vaccine, and gone in a few days, and much better with Tylenol afterwards.
So if I had the COVID virus, do I need the vaccine? Because I will have already had antibodies. That's what my daughter, I've heard, said. She's heard.
So your daughter's right that generally speaking, the immunity is conferred after infection, just like in many viral infections, just like we get immunity after we get the measles, the mumps, and et cetera. But this virus is new. We don't know everything about it. And we think that it's going to confer the same type of immunity as influenza does. So it'll be 2 weeks after the infection, we'll develop immunocompetent antibodies that confer immunity up to about 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But it's the real hard answer to that's not really known yet. But yes, we will have immunity more than likely.
So I'll have immunity, but if I had COVID, I still need it. That's the question?
So
I would still need the vaccine.
so
I
the
should
immunity
get it.
So the authorities and the experts in the field tell us usually that the immunity that's conferred by the vaccine is more effective than the immunity that is conferred by the virus itself. And a lot of that's unknown because it's very new. So we don't have longitudinal studies that will give us that information. But we do know that the vaccine confers immunity. And so for that reason, everybody should have it, even after having had the illness.
So now that we have these vaccines available to us, and once we're able, which is another question I think that our participants would want to hear. But first I want to ask you this. Once we get it, will it end the pandemic? I can take my mask off. Everybody can take their masks off. Is that what we're looking forward to? Is that going to happen like right away? How does that work?
Well, there are a couple of issues here that determine our behavior going forward. One is that we do know that wearing masks and physical distancing and personal hygiene do have a benefit. We do know that. There's a lot of debate as to how much, but it's clear that the authorities and the experts would tell us that have done the investigation of these areas that the spread of the viral particles in the droplets diminish with wearing a mask, so it protects the people we're exposed, that we're in contact with. And it does protect us as well because it is a barrier and it will at least reduce the viral load that we're exposed to. So the masking and the distancing and the hygiene are important going forward because of another factor, which is that we don't know exactly everything about the virus. So we don't know if it's possible to get reinfected. We know that has happened to certain people. We don't know why that happens. We do theorize that it probably has to do with some predisposition, whether it be a comorbidity, meaning another disease that they have, or a less than competent immune response, or maybe some genetic predisposition that would make it more common for them to be reinfected. It doesn't happen often, but it can. So we want to prevent that and we want to reduce that risk as well. The other issue that's come up recently, and I'm sure that we've heard about it in the news, it's been publicized that we do have mutant strains that have occurred over the recent weeks that we've discovered that have probably always existed. But now that we've done genetic studies on these samples, we see that there is differences on these spike proteins, on these particles that the virus present for infections. So we want to be able to protect ourselves against those viruses as well. To be clear, we don't know everything about these viruses because we're just discovering them as we study the swabs and look at the genetic material. But it seems as though the ones that have occurred most frequently in the United Kingdom and South Africa are still susceptible to the immunity that's conferred by the Pfizer and Moderna viruses. We don't know a lot about the Brazilian variant, but there is concern that immunity is not conferred to the Brazilian variant.
So a lot of people are wondering where are we in the process of getting, people vaccinated? How participants, people want to know accessibility, like it looks like on the news, there's not a lot of access to the vaccine. So when we talk about this vaccine, how do we get access?
So this effort really is considered the most promising approach to curbing the pandemic. And that's because when we have a significant number of people who are immune, whether natural immunity or be vaccinated, we will conquer the pandemic, which is what
Right.
the original questions. Normally, pandemics that we've noticed or have studied in the past run a course of about 18 months, and then they burn out. We don't know if this is going to be the case, but that's certainly something that we take into consideration when we look at the Spanish flu of 100 years ago, for example. With the addition of the vaccine that we have now, we expect to really at least be in control, more or less. So the question about is the vaccine available and will it be available is a really good one. In terms of the vaccine, the availability, we are vaccinating the people who are highest risk, and we are completing and able to complete that group of people, which are in the 1A category, people who are frontline healthcare workers and frontline first responders, people who are high risk in nursing home facilities, for example, people who are at high risk with comorbidities. The 1B category, which follows, which will be the senior population over the age of 75, will happen soon. There, we are setting up those distribution locations right now in different areas, and they will be available if you were to Google COVID-19 vaccination New Jersey in your county. It will give you the location where you can sign up and get on the list. There is more demand than there is supply at this point, and which means that the people who are at highest risk will be getting the vaccine first. They're definitely manufacturing at capacity, and I think continue to manufacture capacity as time goes on. The AstraZeneca, which is the third vaccine, I think, which may come online, which is will be evaluated for emergency use authorization by the FDA, by Johnson & Johnson, will be available soon. I don't know exactly when, but that'll be very, very important as well. A little
It's a single, that one's a single dose, right? But why do we have to have, why do we have to get a double dose of this vaccine?
So that's
Why can't we just get?
That's a double dose as well. There are some vaccines that are being developed that are single dose. Some of it has to do, a lot of it has to do with the immune responses generated with exposure, and a lot of times, at least at this point in time, with the technology that we have in the vaccine, in this particular vaccine, we have a second administration of the virus to heighten the immune response. So the body reacts by developing what are called memory cells. It's a little technical, but these immune cells that are memory cells remember being exposed to the particle or the protein that they are developing immunity against. So when they first are exposed, they develop a certain level of immunity, certain level of non-specific immunity, and then memory cells, very specific immunity, and that is heightened by the second administration of the second virus, of the second vaccine, rather.
Second vaccine, right? So
Now, as time goes on and as technology changes, it might become like the flu vaccine, where we only need one administration.
okay. And the negative side effects that people might get, can you share like what people might expect to feel?
Usually they're minor. They're fever, myalgias, aches and pains, some headache, maybe some fatigue with that, and it's
But you're not getting the, but I'm not getting the. I'm sorry, Dr. Sheppell, go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe a little bit more significant after the second administration, and maybe a little bit more with the Moderna vaccine.
Oh, okay. But no one's dying from taking it. I know that there's a lot of.
So that's a real big issue, and I know that there's a lot of concern. Some of it well-founded, a lot of it not. The vaccine itself contains no virus whatsoever. You can't get COVID from the vaccine, and it can't change your DNA, because we're talking a lot about nucleic acids, ribonucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid, RNA, DNA, and really the vaccine itself is quite quite a clever way of developing immunity by having our our own RNA protein manufactured so that we can tag onto it a message. And that's what our messenger RNA does. It gives messages to the DNA. It tells the DNA what to do. This messenger RNA is going to tell our DNA and teach our DNA how to make this spike protein that occurs on the surface of the virus. So if the virus, if we see it as a softball and there's little spiky things that come off of it, those spike proteins actually facilitate adherence to the cell where they're going to infect the cell. The spike protein allows entry of the virus into the cell. The DNA makes that spike protein. It's secreted out into the bloodstream. Our immune system recognizes it as something foreign, makes immunity against it, so that when it comes up against the real spike protein, it destroys the virus. Now, this mRNA that's developed in the laboratory and is in our vaccine, the vaccine does not contain any virus or any preservatives or any thimerosal, any mercury, nothing like that.
How about a microchip that tracks you? That's what, people say on the news, the Inquirer says that.
I would make it a habit not to really refer to the Inquirer as a resource.
But it's out there.
But I think to address that question, no, there are no microchips. There's one message in the messenger RNA to tell the DNA to make that spike protein so that we can develop that specific memory immunity to that spike protein. And that's,
I guess we need to all have a little bit of scientist in us to really grasp everything. It's new, and when it's new, what do people, how they react differently, right?
Yeah, that's true. This is not the first time that we've had something new occur and be available to us. So way back in the 50s when polio was rampant, or very, very more common, obviously, than it is now, fairly well eradicated at this point in this country. The vaccine came out in early 50s, 1955, and people, 53 maybe, people would refuse to take it because they thought that I don't want to take a vaccine that might give me a disease. And in that case, the vaccine actually had attenuated virus, or meaning it contained live virus that was stunned not to be infectious. And people were very afraid of it. But the fear for getting polio was so great over time. When they saw that people who had the vaccine weren't getting polio, there was a definite rush for people to get that vaccine to prevent everybody from getting polio.
Yes.
There's
hesitation.
There's natural hesitation, but it kind of goes away when you see its efficacy.
So there's no if I'm allergic to the flu vaccine because I'm allergic to the eggs in it. There's no eggs in COVID. There's none of those things in this vaccine, right?
No, food allergies, allergies to insects, and eggs, nuts, and things, are not a contraindication to getting the vaccine. There are contraindications, and they revolve around a few things. One is that this vaccine was not really studied in pregnant women, so it's on an individual basis that it's given to pregnant women. The studies were not really performed on people under the age of 16 or 18, depending upon which vaccine it is. So we're not giving that vaccine to people younger than the age of 16 for Pfizer, I believe, and 18 for Moderna. Also, a contraindication would be if somebody has had a serious reaction to a previous vaccination. We would have to really look at that a little more specifically to see what the reason was for that. Also, if there's an allergy to what's called PEG, polyethylene glycol, which is a lipid solvent that the viral message is dissolved in, so it can be administered safely. If people have allergies to things like Miralax or certain other component things that contain PEG, we're not supposed to give the vaccine to those people. And if there's a question mark, we always say go back to your physician to see what your allergy profile really looks like. But no, in a general sense, it's pretty much safe for everybody.
that's great to hear. So I guess, you mentioned ask your physician. So this is good that we're on the call with you today. Ask your physician, ask Dr. Sheppell. But here's a question. If I do, if I'm waiting to get access to the vaccine, but somehow come in contact with COVID-19, what should I do? Should I just go to the ER or should I call you? Not personally, but should I call you? Call the office?
Yeah, I think that the default position is always call if you have a question. There is really no way to determine what viral illness you're exposed to or what respiratory illness you're exposed to, because the symptoms are protein. They're very common in a lot of different diseases. So a phone call is always a good idea. And as long as the symptoms really revolve around the fever, myalgias, or aches and pains, and fatigue, you're going to be asked to stay home and to monitor it at home. And if the symptoms worsen or particularly develop shortness of breath, then we're going to have to ask you to go to the emergency room so that we can do some further testing.
So, I know you talked about the safety of the vaccine and the science behind it. So, but I do want to ask you, while we're on the topic of the office, what are the protocols in your office? Am I going to go in and see like 10 people sitting there? Because that makes me, that would make me nervous. And I think it might make some of the participants on the phone a little nervous. They're curious to know, how do I get back to seeing my doctor?
We follow the CDC protocol, and we don't want to have two people in the waiting room. So there's one person in the waiting room, there's one person in the exam room, and they never see each other. We get tested weekly and sometimes bi-weekly, and we follow the hygienic protocol in cleaning our rooms after every patient. So making sure that there's no contamination from the surface. So we're really very, very strict about that.
So you're recommending the patient that it's okay for people to come to the office and get the regular checkups, because I'm sure routine visits are important.
So we see people for the routine visits that need to be followed, the routine high blood pressure and diabetes and things that would need to be evaluated for heart failure and asthma, COPD. These issues really are very important because they put the people at a higher risk for developing COVID. People who are sick, it depends on the illness. So we would need to talk to them first, I think.
Yeah, I know that, it's very common now, even for myself, to put off our visit to the doctor because we're so COVID consumed that we're not thinking about the other maintenance. I should be going in and getting my annual. As a matter of fact, myself personally, I'm late getting my annual. And I know my doctor sent me a note and said, you should not wait anymore. You need to come in and get your blood work done and make sure everything's okay, just for my general health. So,
well, that's a very important point because, first of all, we needed to see people to administer the flu vaccine. People needed to get the flu vaccine. Women need to get mammograms, and people do need to have their blood pressure and their blood sugar monitored. So these are important things, and the elective procedures were put off during the height of the pandemic, and for good reason. But now we're getting back into the swing of things, really, trying to do preventive medicine as well, make sure that people are having their colonoscopies, make sure that that people are having their cancer prevention procedures, that they're really taking care of their usual healthcare needs.
Right. There's so much anxiety, though, out there about, you're going to catch it, you're going to catch it, you're going to catch it. People stay in and they become, reclusive almost now. And like, what are the mental effects that this is having on our society as a whole, but especially our elderly population, who've been basically now a year told to stay at home?
It's very clear it's very clear that it's having really negative effects in that area. And in terms of that, to try to reduce anxiety on on the part of the patients who may need medical advice, we do telehealth visits at their request.
That's great.
Certainly are available to do that. Um, we do have Zoom capacity, but a lot of times people don't have Zoom capacity, and that's fine. We can talk on the phone and go over the list of things that we need to go over, and still provide care remotely. Not as good as face to face, but certainly certainly better than not having anything.
Absolutely.
The depression and anxiety is definitely higher now than ever before. And a combination of things. One is the worry about the disease. It can be devastating. For most people, it's not, but for a certain population, it can be devastating. So there needs to be a lot of understanding, a lot of reassurance, a lot of information that needs to be passed on, and a lot of availability. Depression and anxiety also from being sequestered and not being able to see anyone. There are people who haven't really had contact with anyone other than the people who drop off their food and supplies at their front door. That's abnormal, and that's not healthy. And the sooner we can get over that, the better.
As human beings, we need that contact. We definitely, if we didn't
There's
know
no
it
doubt about
before, this has made it apparent.
that. And I think that, just as an aside, that's really not our area, but in the younger population and the student population, it is just devastating and very, very sad to see how much depression and anxiety has increased in that group, and how the suicide rate has increased so much in that.
So anybody that's a current patient or a prospective patient for you at the Denville office, they can call and make sure their records are up to date and at least get their physicals scheduled, or have their, like, a wellness check-in. I guess that is important. Maybe we don't realize sometimes how the isolation is making us feel, and I guess that would be a good thing to do, right?
Well, we do promote that, and an annual physical, of course, is an important part of that. We also promote the Medicare annual wellness visit, which is not a physical, but it is a preventive medicine intervention. Very, very important to try to tease out if there are things that we need to diagnose that we haven't previously diagnosed. And there's a list of questions that we go through, and a list of and a protocol that we follow. I really promote that. It's very, very useful for us to know how to proceed and to look into things diagnostically after that.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot, and thank you so much for answering all these great questions, even for me personally. You've helped me, Dr. Sheppell. But I'm sure that the participants have questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jen Cohan, and she can, start the Q&A with some of the callers, of the participants who have a question.
Thanks, Liz. And thank you to all of you who are chatting with me in the chat box and asking some really good questions, some of which I think the timing was really good. We answered a lot of them in the order kind of as they came in. But there were a few that popped up, Dr. Sheppell, that I feel that are good questions to answer at this time. So one goes back to the science behind this vaccine. And in your opinion, is the vaccine that perhaps provides 2 doses any stronger or any different than the vaccines that perhaps are providing only 1 dose?
The trials that are set are continuing and set then pretty much in the near future will tell us that. We know that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines provide up to 95% risk reduction in acquiring the disease, manifesting the disease, 1 week after the second shot. And the booster shot is really necessary at this point to confer that added immunity. There's immunity that occurs after the first shot, within 2 weeks, but it is not at the level that we would want. And it's just a matter of the biology of the body and how the body develops immunity, and with these memory cells. So because of this particular technology, the second shot is required to increase the immunogenicity or the effect of the vaccine. Now, if we develop a vaccine like the flu, it will be effective, but we have to remember that the flu vaccine is not always as effective as that. It's sometimes effective up to 80%, sometimes it's effective to 50%, and it depends upon the mutation of the flu virus. And that's kind of what we're going to be, I think, facing with the COVID-19 is mutation. So we know that this works. We hope that the others will work as well. We're not really sure yet until we have the results of those.
Okay.
We do know
And-
that the AstraZeneca vaccine that's going on may not be quite as effective as the Moderna and the Pfizer.
Okay. And is this the type of vaccine that would prevent you from even contracting COVID-19, or is it a vaccine that just sort of lessens the severity if you should come into contact with the virus in your system?
So the design, this is a bit technical, but the design of the studies were developed such that they wanted to know these vaccines could prevent severe disease. So they wanted to know that they're going to be effective in preventing the really bad outcomes from the disease. So it doesn't tell us the story of whether it prevents the disease. It just tells us that we're not going to get really sick from the disease. Now, if it's at all like the flu, it's probably going to turn out to be that it prevents the disease. And it probably will turn out to be that we will not be able to carry the virus and infect other people with the virus, even though we don't have the disease. It'll probably be that we won't get the disease and we won't carry the disease. But we're not going to know that until longitudinal studies are completed, and that'll be over time.
Mm-hmm. And because we don't know that yet, is that why we're being told that even if we are vaccinated with both doses, that we need to continue to wear a mask?
That is true, and there are two reasons. One is that reason is that there are open questions that need answers. One of the most important ones is that can we transmit the disease even though we're not symptomatic after having the vaccine? So better part of valor is to be cautious. So we should wear our masks, we should physically distance, and we should make sure that we wash our hands and personal hygiene. We'll know more though as time goes on. And as Liz asked, when will we get back to normal? I think a lot of this depends upon some of the answers that are going to come out over the next 6 months or so.
Okay. I have a few questions coming in about people concerned if the vaccine is safe for a variety of different demographics, such as nursing moms, for example. Have we seen any effects on fertility with the vaccine? And a big one is people who are recovering from cancer, perhaps, or people who have inflammatory disorders. A lot of questions are coming in about, is it safe for these types of people?
So breastfeeding moms will probably, this is going to be an individual decision because the study really did not include those people. But if we think about it logically, babies have the mom's immunity for the first 6 months after birth because they haven't developed an immune system on their own competent to fight off a lot of the things that they're going to be exposed to. So some of those nutrients and things are in breast milk, and it would make sense that breastfeeding moms should get the vaccine to develop immunity to the virus. But it should be discussed with the physician and with the pediatrician for sure, because there really is no data to support or to contradict the statement. In terms of the people who would be immune challenged, let's say, people who have had cancer or who have been treated for cancer, people with certain immune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, people who are on immunosuppressants. In general, they should get the vaccine because their immunity is already diminished, and they would need the added help of the vaccine to develop an immune response. Has to be said, though, that that has to be discussed with the doctor and with the oncologist, because there is likely a need for it to be done in a timely fashion where immunosuppressive drugs are not being used at their most potent times. So if the administration is on a cyclical method, you may want to be given the vaccine, may want to be given at the end of the cycle where the immune response may be diminished the least.
Mhm. Okay. So what is the guidance for someone who's recently been diagnosed with COVID and the timing for which they should be looking to be vaccinated?
Okay. One thing about fertility, I don't think that any hard information has come from these studies, because we see that what our endpoints were to see if people were going to get really sick. So that's a question that I really answer specifically. However, it doesn't make any sense to me that there would be any risk for fertility, given the fact that the mechanism for this that this vaccine is so clearly out of the or out of that area of fertility. It doesn't have anything to do with biology of fertility. Important to know also, once that messenger RNA has delivered its message, it never contacts the DNA. It never has contact with our DNA. It never alters our DNA. It delivers the message, and the cell destroys the messenger RNA to reconstitute other proteins. So that messenger RNA is destroyed, never has any close contact with the DNA. It doesn't affect the DNA structure or its function. It only asks the DNA to make this protein.
I'm glad that you addressed that. I know that we've been hearing a lot of questions about that. If someone should be recuperating from a recent infection from COVID-19, how long do you suggest that they wait before they pursue being vaccinated?
So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there between not contradictory at all, but clinicians have decision because it depends on the severity of the disease as well. So if most clinicians are recommending at least 2 weeks after the disappearance of the last symptom of the infection.
Okay.
The public health officials are asking us after the next of the last symptom, and the reason for that is there's probably immunity conferred after having the disease, and in that respect, we can probably use the vaccine for other people who are high risk, who have to remember while we're looking at manufacturing of the vaccine and administration of it to the general population. But routinely, it's safe to take probably about 2 weeks after the last symptom has disappeared from the viral infection.
So what would happen?
The other question I think would make.
I think there's a lag.
Sorry. The other thing that I just want to mention is oftentimes people, and this is important, oftentimes people would ask, well, what if I get COVID in between the first and second vaccine? And although unlikely, because there is immunity that's conferred 2 weeks after the first injection, it's just not as high as after the second. It's recommended that the second vaccine does not take place at least until 2 weeks after the disappearance of the symptom, depending upon how severe the disease is. And again, consider not taking the vaccine for 90 days after the last symptom disappears.
Okay. What are you seeing today in terms of the hospitals that you are affiliated with, in terms of any numbers, and where are we right now with the infection rate in this general area?
See, we're doing pretty well. I say that because in comparison to other places in the country, our rate is around 1 for transmissibility. We want to be below 1. One person has it to one contact, but the rates have definitely spiked. We're certainly seeing that spike here in Morris County. We're seeing in New Jersey and in counties that border New York, like Oregon and Hudson and Union, Ocean, Monmouth, all along that corridor where people commute to New York, and where there's a denser population as well. Saw a spike right after Labor Day and right after Thanksgiving and right after Christmas. And more than likely, people weren't really adhering to the social distancing and wearing the mask protocols as requested. Normal behavior, normal human behavior. We all can't wait to get back to normal and to hug our loved ones and to give kisses and definitely hold hands and be next to people. But we're going to have to wait on that a while.
Okay.
We are not at the level. We are definitely not at the level where our ICUs are full, where our use of respirators are at a limit. Nowhere near that. So certain areas more than others, where people live in close community living, certainly just makes sense that there's contagion that's spread.
Right.
But nothing like California.
Many of the comments that are coming through on the chat justifiably are frustrations over an inability to receive or make appointments for either themselves or their family members who are eligible for the vaccine. Other comments are related to the sites that are set up, and the protocols around registration and making appointments are really not conducive for older adults, like the computer, a lot of things having to be done on the computer. As a physician, what are you advising your patients in terms of where they should be going to register, and where could they be going to receive the vaccine once they're eligible?
The locations are well are publicized, but you're right. I think that mostly web-based information. Some, if you do listen to Channel 12 News New Jersey, they'll give a coronavirus update, and they'll give information on locations as well. So Morris County, it's at the Rockaway Mall in the old Sears company store. In Livingston, it's at the Livingston Mall. In Hudson County, there was one in Kearney. So the information is out there, but that's true. It really is publicized on the web more than it is in accessible means like the newspaper and TV. Mm-hmm. But I think that we try and help them with that information. We always recommend getting your grandkids involved too. Right. The younger the better, right? Yes, the younger, they know much more technologically advanced than exactly. A lot of us.
I know. And so another question came up about, I know we addressed this a little bit. I think you said that, when you receive the vaccine, the science behind the vaccine is not actually giving you COVID. It's allowing your body to have an immune response to fight it in the future. So if one were to take a COVID test shortly after receiving the vaccine, is it at all possible that they would get a false positive for COVID on a swab?
No, I will go into that a little bit, but just to mention about the COVID vaccine accessibility, we are behind. We do need more vaccine, and every effort is being made, as far as I know, to provide. And I think that if we keep current Google COVID-19 coronavirus 19 jersey.gov vaccine, I think that will give us the information that we need. We cannot test positive after getting the vaccine because we don't have the virus and we don't really have any genetic material in the vaccine itself. And the testing that we don't is usually by nasal swab, whether it's a rapid test or whether it's a traditional test.
I don't want to interrupt you. I know we're having a little bit of
blood,
Technical
but that's not really what we mean by testing for positive COVID.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, you have 2 office locations now, correct? So I know you merged with Fellowship Medical Group. So of course you have an office here on campus at Fellowship Village in Basking Ridge. And your other office is in Denville, correct, Dr. Sheppell?
That's right. Yeah, it's about 30 minutes from here, and it's been in the Denville area for quite some time, and we have a fairly big practice that's been serving internal medicine and geriatrics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I just want for all of you that are on the call, if you're not currently a patient of Dr. Sheppell's and you'd like to look into seeing Dr. Sheppell at all at the Denville office, I just want to pass along the telephone number for you to call. It's 973-627-0555. And I know you're accepting new patients temporarily. Is that correct at the current time?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Okay, terrific. I want to thank both of you for being our host today and giving us a little bit more insight about what's happening with the vaccine, so that for anyone who has any questions, who might be on the fence, hopefully they had most of their questions answered today. I want to let everybody know that if you have any further questions, you have our contact information. I've spoken to you, or Liz has spoken to many of you on the phone. You're always welcome to reach out to us, and we can certainly put you in touch with Dr. Sheppell if you'd like. And before we sign off and thank everyone for coming, is there anything else, Dr. Sheppell or Liz, that you would like to talk about today?
I don't have
just 2 things.
Go ahead, Dr. Sheppell. I don't know if we're having a little technical difficulty, perhaps. I'd love to hear what he has to say. Is this the teaser?
That often come up in discussion and the actually. And
we need you to repeat back up, Dr. Sheppell. Start over. Can you start over? Because we really want to hear what you have to say.
So what we'll do is we'll find.
Can you hear me now?
It's a little broken up. So
yep.
I'll have Dr. Sheppell tell me what those 2 additional items were, and we will be sure to email all of you. Oh, he's coming back on.
There he is.
There he is. Okay. Oh, I have to ask him to unmute. Just give me one moment. Oh, I don't see him. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna move this here.
Okay, there we go.
All right, can you hear us?
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes,
Little
now we
better.
can.
I can.
We can
Yeah.
hear you now.
I would imagine that there are a few things that I hear in the doctor's lounge all the time. And I don't know if it's a thing for our audience or not. Can you hear?
I think we can hear you. Maybe you can't hear us.
No. Hmm.
Okay.
You know what? It must be technical difficulty. Things frozen.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, that's
Okay.
not a problem. We'll have Liz give her final viewpoints, and then I will find out what Dr. Sheppell's final thoughts were, and we can send all of that out on an email to all of you.
I just want to, say thank you to Dr. Sheppell and Jen for coordinating this great informational call, and Dr. Sheppell, as always, for being, having all of the answers to all of our questions. It's very helpful. This, again, is such a time of uncertainty for all of us, but we really appreciate being able to talk to a doctor face to face like this. Wow, that's the one great thing COVID did for us. Easy access to our physician, and we really appreciate it, Dr. Sheppell.
Okay.
So thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for joining. And if you, Jen's going to follow up with Dr. Sheppell's comments. It'll keep us all, now we're all curious to hear what he was actually going to say as in closing remarks.
Exactly.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.